Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. Ryan is a family man, first and foremost, but he's also a pastor, publisher, and serial entrepreneur. This podcast will help you think, work, and create like never before.
Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. I'm Ryan Frank. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I am grateful for your time and your attention. If you are new to the podcast, I want to remind you that there is a YouTube version of the podcast as well as an audio version of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast with those that would benefit. I would appreciate it if you would take a few minutes, if you haven't already, and rate the podcast. Make sure you subscribed so that every time we drop a new episode, you'll be in the know. I'm eager for you to listen in on today's conversation. I had the opportunity to sit down recently with Tina Hauser. Tina Hauser is a beloved children's ministry champion. For many, many years, she was on our staff here at Kids Matter. She helped us launch a curriculum, helped us edit our magazine and get it out the door, helped us with several book projects. And if you know Tina very well, those of you that follow her on social media or you're friends with Tina, you know that she has had her share of physical challenges and struggles. And today, I sat down with Tina and talked to her about how do you remain steadfast in the storm? Because if there's anybody who has really had, at least for her entire adult life, a good number of storms, physically, it's Tina Hauser. But yet she remains steadfast. She remains full of joy and purpose. And so today we had the opportunity to sit down and just talk about her life journey and some of the recent challenges and what she does to stay steadfast and positive and encouraged. I know you're going to find a ton of value from today's conversation. And I got to tell you, I was a little surprised at the very end of the podcast when I asked Tina my final question, and that, of course, if you listen to the podcast, you know it's tell me something big you're working on. She unpacked several points of things that Tina is doing, that she's doing day after day. And Tina, although she is dealing with a lot of physical challenges, the last thing she's doing is sitting still. So I'm excited to introduce to you Tina Hauser, a dear friend, a fellow worker in children's ministry. And so let's get this show on the road. Without any further ado, here is our friend, Tina Hauser. Hey, Tina, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thanks for asking me, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm so humbled and grateful to have you. I think most all of the children's ministry leaders that are watching or listening to this podcast, when I say the name Tina Hauser, they get a smile on their face because you are just known as somebody that is a champion for children's ministry and children's ministry leaders, and you're an encouragement, and you are just filled with such joy. But, you know, I don't want to assume that everybody knows Tina Hauser. So, Tina, would you take a minute and just tell us your story? Love to hear just more about you, your family, even your ministry journey. Take a few minutes and just kind of tell us your story.
Okay, well, ministry started through what my husband likes to call recruiting by whining. He was an associate pastor, and about 6 or 8 weeks into that position, children's church was added to his job description. And he did not know anything about it. Every Sunday afternoon, he came home complaining all afternoon. I don't like them. They don't like me. Blah, 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 blah. So after about 6 weeks, 8 weeks of that, I threw up my hands and I said, if you will just shut up on Sunday afternoons, I will take over kids' church. I didn't know what I was doing. A couple of years later, I came across a lady named Elsie Sexton, who had a Bible school in the trunk of her car. And it was based on stations and play. Totally fascinated me. After a year, after having her present our Bible school, I just dove into it. And from there, I wrote 28 Bible schools. It was another probably 8 years before the major publishing companies started using that method, that concept of play.
So Tina, can I jump in? So she literally everything that she needed to run this VBS would fit in the trunk of her car.
Yes.
She
Yep.
could pop it open, pull out what she needs.
Yep. All these games, and all you had to do was provide volunteers.
Okay.
And the day before, she'd set up, she'd train your volunteers, and away you went. The kids rotated through these activities, and nobody has ever heard of Elsie Sexton.
No,
But
what she did, I mean, is she still here?
I
Is-
don't
you ever-
know. Had her do that Bible school for me, and boy, it lit a fire under me for sure.
I bet.
And that's when we got to Kokomo, where my husband pastored for 18, 20 years.
Yeah.
We used that concept outside of rotating the kids through different play stations to learn, and found it to be extremely successful. The church slowly and steadily tripled in size. We outgrew our building. It was because of my husband embracing children's ministry, having that vision, and the board bought into it. And even when we built our new building, every room in the church, they said, had to be designed so that kids could use it. Even if the initial use wasn't for kids, that it could be converted for kids. Even the sanctuary, as beautiful as it is, within minutes can become basketball courts.
Uh-huh.
So that's where we went from there. About 9 months after moving into that building, I decided to resign. My writing was taking off. I was being asked to speak all over the place. And I really felt like it was God saying it's time.
Yeah.
And so on a Monday night, I went in and I resigned. They offered me a 2-week all paid vacation anytime, any place we wanted to go. And I said, I'd love to take that vacation, but I don't think God's going to change his mind just because I went on vacation.
Yes.
And I had no idea what was actually going to happen from there. But strangely enough, the very next morning, I got a phone call from you.
I remember it. Remember it. Yeah.
And you said, hey, Tina, I got an idea. Can we meet? And so on Friday, we met together for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And you threw the idea out to me about writing a curriculum for kids' church, which is now known as the This I Know curriculum.
That's right.
And I became the first full-time employee at Kids Matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was probably one of the most obvious God timing moments of my life. But he moved quickly and reassured me.
I had no idea, did I, that you had just resigned from the church and that you were in a season of transition? No.
And I remember you saying, have you talked to my wife? Has she let you in on this? And I said,
yes.
no.
Yes.
And when you said, when could you start? I said, well, and this is how I told you. I said, I resigned on Monday night. I gave them 2 weeks, so about 9 days, but I'd like an extra week just to relax. And within 3 weeks, I was working there.
Yeah. A lot of you that are watching or listening to the podcast, you may not realize that that's part of Tina's story and Beth and my story, is that we had the opportunity for several years to work side by side on the curriculum and the magazine. Yeah, that's right. Books.
Yep.
Boy, you jumped in and served so well. And God just continued to bless your ministry and grow your platform and, give you ideas for books. So talk to us about some of that.
I had no clue what was coming.
Yeah.
I never pursued writing books. Never even was on my radar that one day I'd like to be an author. It came to my door. Recently, I published my 20th book this last fall called The Early Bird Catches the Word, which is about recapturing that pre-service time instead of giving it away, giving it a purpose.
Yeah.
And the book that I have most recently written, whatever that is usually my favorite because I've just poured so much time into it. And I've gotten such wonderful feedback from people who have started using that book. I also dearly love Secret Weapon, which is 75 different ways
Yes.
to pray with kids.
Yes.
And of course, the book that most people associate with me as are the two books, Beaker's Bubbles and the Bible Science Experiments that connect.
Dr. Bunsen Burner.
Dr. Bunsen Burner.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing about Tina Hauser books, and those of you Kidmin leaders that are listening or watching, if you get your hands on a Tina Hauser book, it's a book that you really do treasure and you keep forever, because it is just so practical and so many great ideas. And I'm excited about your newest book as well, Tina. The Early Bird. Is it the Early Bird?
The Early Bird Catches the Word.
Catches the Word. That's
not
right.
the worm. Yeah.
Catches the word.
Right. Because they're all those activities have to do with developing Bible skills.
Yes.
And so that's where the name came from. Actually, two of the I Love Kid Men people came up with the name for
Did
me.
they?
Yep.
That's neat.
Yeah.
All of Tina's books you can find on our website, tinahauser.net. I assume that's correct, right?
You know what? The website is going to be going down pretty soon. The best way is to go to warnerpress.org and type my name in the search bar.
Nice.
And they have a page that's just devoted to the books I wrote.
Love it. warnerpress.org and search Tina Hauser.
Yeah.
Tina, the title of the podcast today is Steadfast in the Storm. And, as I was thinking about this interview and this conversation, this is the phrase that kept coming to mind as I think about Tina Hauser and the opportunity that God gave us to work together, and knowing about difficulties you've had physically, even back then. And in these recent days, I think if there's anybody that's attempted to be steadfast in the storm, especially as we think of physical storms and things going on, with your physically, it's Tina Hauser. Tina, would you tell us about when I say steadfast in the storm, what do storms look like for you in your life, especially in the area of just physically?
Well, I had a unique birthday present. On my 18th birthday, I was diagnosed with crippling rheumatoid arthritis. And within 3 months, it progressed so quickly, I was unable to take care of myself. The RA has been obvious in my life every day since then. I've had 68 surgeries. Number 68 was this past fall, Thanksgiving week. A high percentage of those surgeries have actually been caused by side effects from medication that I've taken for 48 years every day, which is prednisone. I was diagnosed in 1974. And at that time, there were only 3 things they treated it with: gold shots, aspirin, and prednisone. Gold shots and aspirin did not work for me. But the prednisone was able to give me some relief, and it gave me life for 8 years, We were told in the middle of that we would never be able to have kids. Our son is 41 years old. So they were wrong on that.
Yes,
but
they
he
were.
He grew up with a mom that was never able to get on the floor and play with him. And with the reality that mommy may not be with the family very long, which has given him a very unique perspective on life. Recently, and I hesitated to agree to this podcast because I haven't talked about this yet. And I don't want this to sound like a medical report. I also want to issue a disclaimer here. Whatever I share today is not a blanket solution for anyone. It is just how I'm processing it, how I'm learning to live with it. And how God is revealing himself to me.
Yeah.
That does not mean this is your answer, but hopefully it's going to give the listeners something to chew on, something to
Yes.
think about. Okay.
Mhm.
I want to be able to communicate what real life to Tina is like now.
Yeah.
As Ryan said, you all know me as this bubbly, energetic worship presenter who oozes enthusiasm
Yes.
and is totally committed to seeing kids begin their lifelong journey with Jesus as their Savior and as their Lord. But the past 2 years have drastically changed the way that landscape looks. So I'm just going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I said, I've been on prednisone for 48 years every day. And the side effects of that are pages long in medical books. Those side effects usually manifest themselves within 3 months. But mine actually didn't happen. And I can say that with a lot of gratitude that God gave me a respite from that. And I was able to embrace a lot of wonderful opportunities, especially in children's ministry for over 40 years.
Yes.
And that prednisone gave me life. But recently, the side effects have been very real and very life-changing. It's like all of those years when I wasn't seeing them, they all kind of unified in an attack here on my body. And even the progression of my RA has gone into super overdrive.
Really?
I always knew this day was coming. And that's why every day, 24/7, 365 of all those years, I tried to take in and accomplish as much as I could when I could. 4 years ago, a stranger at O'Hare Airport in Chicago dropped a 50-pound piece of luggage down the back of my right leg. He picked that piece of luggage up and took off for his destination and didn't even say, excuse me.
Really?
It left me with this goose egg size hematoma in the back of my leg, and it would not heal. Prolonged use of prednisone decreases your ability to heal, to fight infection. It thins your skin to tissue paper, and it messes with your blood flow. So that hematoma had a party. And after doing everything we could think of, I was headed into surgery for a 24-inch bypass down my leg, trying to get oxygen to that wound when the surgeon came to escort me and pulled back the cover sheet and discovered E. coli in my leg, which meant my only option left was to have it amputated. That happened about 3 years ago. Above the knee amputations are a lot more difficult than below the knee to recover from. My doctors were convinced I'd never walk again, but I had a friend who introduced me to a prosthetist who takes on cases from all over the world that other doctors give up on. And within 3 months, I was up and walking again and even navigating the stairs to our basement. But the other side effect of prednisone is that it crumbles your bones. And last year, I started experiencing this extreme pain in my neck that went and in my lower back because my vertebrae were falling apart. In mid-August, this last August, 22, I had a surgery on my neck where they completely severed the nerve bundle at vertebrae 1. That nerve bundle is about the size of a Sharpie marker.
Really?
And this guaranteed a sure stop to the pain that was in my neck going up the back of my head and down my face. I couldn't even lay my head against a pillow at night without crying. It's called helmet head because it covers where a helmet would be.
Okay.
I wanted to scream, and a lot of times the wanting just turned into real screams. I still have all of that pain. So the thing we learned was cutting through that bundle, although they said it was 100% guaranteed, it's not. And they can't figure out why I still have that pain, but
Wow.
I do.
But you do.
It makes it real difficult for me to raise my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that affected my walking, because in order to use a prosthetic leg, you have to be able to look straight forward in order to keep your balance. And
Yes.
so it was affecting my walking a lot. When I went in for that neck surgery, I always, all 68 surgeries, 67 surgeries, I got what they call a stress dose of cortisone, because a lot of my organs now depend on that. And they get out of whack because of the stress of a surgery.
Yeah.
So I had talked to my surgeon twice, to his assistant twice, to the anesthesiologist assistant, and to the anesthesiologist, who talked to him twice. One of those times was on our way into the surgery room about the fact that I was going to get that stress test. Yes. For some reason, once we got in there and I was under, he decided it wasn't necessary and did not consult any of the rest of the surgical team. The result of that was, when I came out, I had all these additional fluids from IVs, and it's caused me to lose a lot of my eyesight, because that fluid gathered in my eyes and I can't get it to go away. But the main thing was the fluid headed down my left leg. Gravity took over, and it formed a blister on my ankle about 3 inches by 2 inches. And it started letting those fluids out. Within 24 hours, I lost 4 pounds.
Wow.
Just because of the fluid that was coming out my ankle,
Wow.
which turned into a wound. And then there were 5 or 6 more blisters, because they were trying to help out the main one. And those all turned into wounds. Well, I went in, I went back to my surgeon. I said, what do I do? And he said, nothing's going to happen as long as you can deal with the pain. It's not going to get worse, but you know what's inevitable. We got to take that other leg off. So I decided to deal with the pain. And then about 2 months later, it started stinking. I was rotting. My foot was actually rotting. And so I went back and they scheduled the surgery immediately. Losing one leg above the knee is completely different than losing both of them above the knee. And as is pretty common with me, I always have something additional that has to be dealt with. I had all these therapists and people were saying, oh, I know somebody that is a double amputee, and your arms take over and you build up all this strength. Well, my problem was my shoulders don't work. My elbows don't work very well. My wrists are frozen. They don't work. And I have fine motor skills only in one finger on each hand left. So I didn't have that. So we've had to become really creative in how I, actually get around and work through this new thing of being a double amputee.
Yeah. Tina, what a story. Do you feel
Days
like
look different.
what's that?
My days sure look different now.
Oh, I
than
bet they
used
do.
to.
I bet they do.
I have to
bet
think
they do.
about everything. Yeah.
Yes, I bet. And I'm sure it's, even your husband, Ray, who is by your side all the time helping. I mean, it's changed his life as well, hasn't it?
Oh my God. Oh, yeah. I can't reach out, and because my shoulders don't work. So I can't reach anything on a counter. I can't put something in the microwave. So he does, we team do meal prep. It's exhausting, but I can get to we bought a adjustable little table, and I can chop things there, but he does that. And he now has to do all the laundry. He does all the errand running. I don't leave the house basically, because it's just, there's so many things to think about. And I have to decide, okay, where am I going to go to the bathroom
Oh, I bet.
if I leave the house? I don't even go to my son's house, who lives 5 miles from here, because he only has a half bath on his first floor.
Uh-huh.
So I
Yeah.
stay home, or I negotiate. Okay, this is how it works.
Yes.
But Ray is there all the time, and he just has had an incredible attitude about all this. And he tells people, and he tells me, that what he is doing is an honor,
Mm.
and it's his opportunity to prove his marriage vows. He will tell
Wow.
that to total strangers. He's learned to use
Yeah.
some new words like sure and no problem and do you need anything? And that's his typical response every single time.
What
I ask him for the smallest task for him to help me with, even though he might be in the middle of something.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you, one of the most interesting things has been how to get me in and out of the car.
Yeah.
And so if you'll just imagine this, okay, I'll try to paint this picture. I go outside and get up next to the passenger side of the car, open the door, and I pull in as close as I can. Then I waddle off of my wheelchair and into the floor of the passenger side of the car. Then Ray moves the wheelchair back out of the way and parks it in the garage. And then he comes back and puts his forearms under my armpits and picks me up and puts me in the car seat. Now, I'm only 3 feet 11 inches now, and I weigh 78 pounds. So it's not a huge amount for him to pick up, but it is for a 70-year-old man who has severe asthma.
Yes.
So I hate the fact that I throw him into having to use his inhaler every time he tries to move me. So when I get somewhere, then we have to just do all of this in reverse. Him lifting me into the seat, getting the wheelchair, our portable wheelchair, out of the back of the car, pulling it up next to me, and me waddling out of the floor onto the wheelchair. But it was hard to figure out because none of my therapists had ever had anybody that had the issues that I have. Now, can you imagine? Nobody has ever had issues. I'm always that 1% of the cases. So I feel very blessed that every Saturday Lucy comes over for 6 hours. She's 6 years old now. And I realized just 3 or 4 weeks ago that I had not seen anyone but Lucy between going to church Sunday to Sunday. And so, I'm on my computer a lot, but going out, you could tell me what we had 15 inches of snow, and I wouldn't be the wiser to it. We are hoping. It's supposed to come this week, but it's been put off to mid-May now. A new wheelchair that actually the seat raises 12 inches. So that should make it a lot easier for me to do things at the counter and in the bathroom. See, I can't even turn the faucet on in the bathroom without using a funny little hook on a stick that I have.
Really?
But when we looked into a wheelchair accessible van 2.5 years ago, they were running about $23,000. They've almost doubled in 2 years. So we're saving our pennies, but we're hoping that's going to happen pretty soon, at least after we get this new wheelchair. We want to make sure that's going to work. But
I gotcha.
It's, one of the things that has been an eye-opener is that from dinner on, the rest of the evening, I don't participate in things. I don't get into conversations where my opinion or my insight is taken seriously because I am so exhausted from the amount of pain medication that I have to take and just the sheer, energy that it takes to do all these little tasks that I don't trust myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a decision on something at that time of day. I may start thinking about it, but boy, I am so glad that I've deleted emails or Facebook posts that I've written at that time of day. And when I realized that, I just, I don't, because of how long it takes me to get ready and preparing meals, I have to be real strategic about how I use that other amount of time and when I do. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
Tina, thank you for, being, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, but I'm sure that's not easy to talk about. And thank you for sharing your story. You have so many, and I know I don't have to tell you this, but you have so many people that are on your team and that are just pray for you and lift you before the Lord. The title of the podcast, this episode, is Steadfast in the Storm. Has it been easy for you to be steadfast in the storm? I mean, are there days, I'd love for you to hear about how you've remained steadfast, but I also love to hear from you, like, honestly, has it been difficult to be steadfast at times? Or do you find that every day you just wake up with, God gives you what you need and it's good? Talk to us about that word steadfast.
This is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Hardest thing I've been through a lot, but this time period is difficult. And I'm not going to lie to you about that. It's because I've been a Christian since I was 13 and I have chased after God that amount of time. I think it's different for someone who has seen God prove himself over and over and over and over again. When he started out, you want to go, oh, come on. Yeah. Why do you think this time he's not going to come through? And that helps in being steadfast. But I tell you, the main thing is that God has enabled me to keep my eyes on heaven. So many Christians are terrified of dying. Yeah. And I just don't get it. They must read Philippians 1:21, where Paul says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. It's gain. And they must just sit there in their life groups when they're studying that and discuss what it means for Paul and never make any application for their own lives. If we truly, truly believe, then we should be looking forward to that day. Boy, that's true. And so, when I catch myself in this mind game that I think a lot of Christians catch themselves in, that when they're facing death, they go, oh, and they get so sad about what they're going to miss out on. Well, the fact is, in heaven, there is no sadness. That's true. It's going to be even more joyful than I think it is here. So how can I be sad about missing out on something when the experience of heaven is going to so totally eclipse the best of times, more than we can imagine here on earth. So when I feel myself slipping into that about, oh, I'm going to miss out on Kendall getting married or, those kind of things, I just want to say, God, please get my eyes back on heaven, because I'm going to party there with them in totally new experiences. And I don't want to sound morbid here, but, my bones are falling apart. It's more than just losing my legs. Yeah. And up to this point, my mission has been to live well in order to make God's love obvious,
Mm.
evident,
Mm.
present. My mission now, and I don't know how far away this is. I'm not saying it's next week,
Yes.
but my mission now is to die well in order to make God's love evident.
Wow.
And it is just as important, maybe even more important. I think the one thing that helps you remain steadfast is when you can be real with yourself about what the condition is, whether it's a physical condition, an emotional thing, a relationship thing. Our doctor, my family doctor, has actually spoken to me twice. He's spoken to Ray twice about me going into hospice care.
Mm.
And that word just goes, die, you know.
Yeah.
And now is not the time to give up. That's not what he's saying. He's a friend, he's a Christian, but he also knows that that could possibly give me some ways of getting some pain relief.
Yeah.
Now's not the time to give up. It is the time, and this is biblical, it's the time to finish strong.
Mm.
You know, to head into it, and you know how a runner leans into that finish line. I want to lean into this. It's really important to get the right perspective on how short life is. You know, I often think life is this one little speck on a giant wall that is eternity. And we get so fixed on that tiny little speck that we can hardly see on the wall that we forget about how big and how wide and how awesome heaven is. You know, 1 Peter 5:10 says, after you have suffered for a little while, Tina, the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself perfect and confirm and strengthen and establish you, Tina. So how you said earlier, I'm a practical person. Well, yeah. How do you do that practically?
Yeah.
There are two words that I've had to overcome. Debilitation and desperation, because pain can be debilitating.
Yes.
And I have to make a choice. So much of all of this, of being steadfast, is choosing. And I have to choose to say, Satan, you are not going to put your foot on my throat and debilitate me. I'll admit there are times that I just feel like I don't have the strength to do that. But being steadfast means calling on God to say, help me smack this foot off of my throat.
Yeah.
And you got to say, Satan, you are not the master. The master is my creator God.
Yeah.
Even if that means you say it through tears, even if it means that I am crying because of the amount of pain, I am not going to choose to let it crush me or debilitate my spirit. The other word is desperation, because, man, when you're in pain, you get desperate and you will chase after bogus cures. We have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on chasing after, you know, the only cure that's really out there.
Yes.
And what I learned was there are about 5 or 6 questions that when I feel myself being tempted to chase after one of those quote unquote cures, that I ask myself, and then I come to a good conclusion. You know, there are some things that are very practical that I do that boost my steadfastness. And one of those is music. I have a playlist called Songs for Challenging Times. I don't listen to secular music because music ministers, goes directly to my soul. Garbage in, garbage out, good stuff in, good stuff out. And music carries me to the feet of Jesus. And so it's a must have as I begin my day. You know, it is biblical. David says that steadfastness is related to music. In Psalms 57:7, it says, my heart is steadfast. I will sing, Tina.
Wow.
Yes,
Yes.
I will sing praises. It comes down to what you surround yourself with and what you cultivate.
Yeah.
Again, 2 words. It seems like 2 words seem to, I can't remember more than 2 words. I surround myself with people who are going to speak Jesus into my life, who are going to bombard me with positivity and comfort, and people who know when to speak and they know when to shut up. People who are willing to help me without even being asked. You know, when your well is really dry, when that spirit is dry, don't invite people into your space who are going to drain you. Kick those people out, oust them that, you know, seem to enjoy sucking the life out of everybody else. This is not the time or the place for them. And this is, I can say that I Love Kid Men Facebook page is the community that is a wonderful example of the kind of people to surround yourself with. I have received thousands of comments on that Facebook page. And I have read every single one of them multiple times, many of them.
I bet.
And I've just been overwhelmed by the people who actually wrote notes. Now, of course, I appreciate, I love the fact that people just simply took a moment to say, praying for you. But the ones who really helped me, who really spoke into my spirit, were the ones who said, let me remind you of the impact of your ministry. Let me tell you how you influenced me and how you have influenced the kids that I pastored. I really needed that. I copied those and pasted them into documents.
Did you?
So that I can go back and quickly just read through those. If I need to say, hey, you need to be surrounded by people that are going to build you up. And then the other people that I've surrounded myself with are those 3 very special grandkids. I intentionally search out times when I can be with them. You know, I said that my mission has been to live life well in order to make God's love evident. And I've been very intentional about doing that in front of Bowen and Kendall and Lucy. But now that is shifting, I also want them to have a front row seat. I want them to witness how grandma is going to look toward heaven and live that in a joyful way every day. My mission has been on kids and the people that lead kids for the past 40 years. And now it has, although I still have a heart for that, and I'm going to figure out ways to interject myself there when I can, it is whittled down very specifically to these 3 kids.
To those 3 kids.
One of the interesting things that's happened is that people I don't really know have been impacted, have noticed what a priority we put on our grandkids. Jared's president of our local baseball league. And so he frequently has conversations with coaches and parents that, you know, for 5 months out of the year, the ball field is their home. And he will tell me how they have said, we admire your parents so much. I wish my kids had grandparents like your kids have. We watch how Ray tucks that blanket in around your mom. We want role models.
I love that.
That are like you guys, your parents. Men have expressed how they want to honor their wives the way Ray honors me. It really became real when I was in the rehab facility and Jerry came to visit, and he was carrying this great big box, and in it was a blanket with that was made out of material that was the team colors and had the league logo embroidered on it. In the box was a 200-piece puzzle that they had made from Bowen's team. In it was 5 containers. They must have asked Bowen, Kendall, and Lucy what my favorite crackers and cookies were because there were 5 boxes of those in that box. There was almost $200 worth of gift cards just for gasoline and groceries and food, whatever, And then there was a package of pictures that they had printed out for me to put all over the room. So what does Steadfast have to do with that? Well, none of those people, unless I'm not aware of it, none of those people have a relationship with Jesus. And what they need and what they are wanting it's obvious by the comments they've made to Jared that they're wanting to see somebody live out their faith. They're wanting to see somebody who is steadfast. And apparently, Ray and I are doing that as we go to every single game. Rain, 10 degrees, it doesn't matter. So our purpose is to remain steadfast. And I think that's a purpose that all of us need to embrace. It helps me to cultivate, and this may sound really stupid. It may sound, I don't know how it's going to sound, but I cultivate a good reflection in the mirror. When I get up and I say, even if I don't want to get on with the day, I say, get up, get dressed, get those pajamas off. Force yourself to do this first thing of the day. Put your going out clothes on, fix your hair, put your makeup on. And I play this mind game of, I don't really feel this bad because I'm looking good. I'm not just talking to men here, but it helps. I mean, women here, men do that. It helps me when I look in the mirror to go, okay, it's not as bad as it looks or as I'm thinking it is because it looks better. I'm going to press on. And the other last thing I'd say I have to cultivate is being the receiver of help rather than the one who's always giving it. When I can receive help, it gives me the emotional and the physical bandwidth to make it through another day. This is really hard for me because when I see a need, I'm going, I want to jump in and help.
You do.
And now when I see a need, I'm going, jump in and help. So what I do is I go, Ray, did you see? Maybe you ought to go help. Like, get a grip, Tina. He's got his hands full helping you. Don't make him feel like he's got to be out there on the front lines. Right now, I just have to realize that I'm not the only person in the world that has ever been able to meet a need. And I need to be comfortable with being the one that receives. And through that reversal in my attitude, it just opens doors and it allows God to do his work to replenish that steadfast spirit because it strengthens me again.
Tina, these are such good words for all of us that are listening or watching, wherever you're at in your life journey, your ministry journey. Tina, it's been great for me to hear from you, and just a great reminder that what you bring into your mind is so important. And I love that about you. You've always loved the scripture, and through this, you're taking God's word. Begin your day with worship music. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with positive people. Tina, my last question before we get to the final two questions that I always like to ask
Okay.
is, and I don't, maybe there's nothing you would add because you have given a lot of advice, but is there an additional word of advice you would give someone who is struggling right now to stay strong during a difficult time? And maybe it's something physically, maybe it's something spiritually, maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's something emotionally. Maybe they're dealing with something from the past, someone who's struggling and say, boy, I want to be steadfast, but I'm struggling right now. Is there any additional advice you would give or wisdom you would share?
Well, this kind of comes in a lesson that I've learned that, and this may strike some people, rub some people wrong, but important lesson is to own what it is that you're going through. It doesn't mean that you're going through it because of something you did. I didn't do anything as a teenager that caused me to have RA. But it's mine. The RA belongs to me. I own it. I claim it. And if you don't own something, then you'll find somebody to blame.
That's a good point.
Whether that is God, or it's your doctor, or it's a family member, or it's a situation, or it's karma.
That's true. Yep.
You'll start feeling sorry for yourself because you feel like it's totally out of your control, and you get depressed because you buy into this idea that nobody cares and there's nothing you can do about it. But when you own something, when it's yours, then you're constantly trying to be better at taking care of it. And you don't want to do anything that will tear you down or harm you because of this thing, this suffering, this challenge, this heartbreak.
Yeah.
Because it belongs to you. People who have experienced something difficult in their childhood, they're hanging on to it. Or maybe they've overcome an addiction. They've have a spouse who committed suicide, or they're facing a chronic disease. Whether it ends good or bad, they'll say that it doesn't define them. And that's really a common thing for us to hear right now from speakers and everything, that does not define me. And I tend to disagree with that pretty adamantly. Ultimately, I know that my definition in the sight of God is that I am a child of his, and I am a sister to Christ. And I'm not, for the sake of heaven, defined by that circumstance, but by who God says that I am. I wholeheartedly believe that. But too many people want to say that their past or what they're going through isn't part of who they are. To say that those experiences are not part of defining who I am, that it didn't define me here on earth, that's not true. And my RA has had a profound impact on how I live life. That's why I'm here today. To say it's not part of my definition is for me to be in a place of denial. When somebody sees me, whether it's a kid or an adult, their first thought of me is about the obvious. Her legs are gone, her hands are really crooked, and her head doesn't sit right on her shoulders. What is going on? They are thinking, she looks really strange. I've never seen anybody without legs, but I'm going to try not to look. I'm going to try to act like I don't notice that her legs are gone. What is it that makes her hands so crooked? They'll think, I know they're thinking, I don't know what to say, so I'm going to turn my head and look a different way and pretend I don't see her. Those are all things that contribute to their first impression, their first definition of who I am. And it breaks my heart, Ryan, but for the first time in my life, kids that I meet are afraid of me. Or they clutch their mom's legs, or they're standoffish. Even kids I've known for years. react that way.
Mm.
But these are all part of my story.
Yeah, they are.
And they're things that help me define who I am, what I've gone through, and how God has used it. And when I own the fact that I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
when I own the fact that I need help in doing pretty much every little task that everybody else takes for granted, like getting a fork in my hand and using it to put food in my mouth. Do you ever have to think about that?
Nope. You're
I
right.
do. Every
Mm-hmm.
single time I take a bite, I have to figure out how I'm going to manage to do it. But when I own it, I can more readily embrace the question, how can I use my situation to make today count? To give it a purpose, to give it God's purpose.
Yeah.
My reality, my definition is different than anybody else's. And your reality, Ryan, and your definition is different than mine, and it's different than anybody else around you.
That's true.
Your definition comes from everything that you experienced in the past and everything that you're experiencing right now, whether it's something that is joyous and exciting or it's something that's traumatic and chronic.
Yeah.
So I've learned, and I would want to challenge people to own your reality, and you choose. Choosing is a big thing.
Yeah.
When you choose to own it, you'll be able to step into the plan that God has uniquely envisioned for your life right now. And to ignore the bad things, that to me denies God the opportunity to use those bad things for his good purpose. Now, to tell somebody in the middle of it, oh, God's got a good purpose, you want to go smack across the face. Not now. I'll get that place. But right now, I have to choose to own it, to get through it day by day. And hopefully that is what I'm doing here in this podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
I want to encourage people to do things that bring you joy. You need those. You need to find satisfaction. You need to find purpose. So fill your days with those things. God really wants to use them to overshadow the hard stuff, which will keep you steadfast. It really will.
So good, Tina. Thank you so much.
Those are the last two questions.
Yeah, this has been such a good conversation. And I'm just so grateful, Tina. I know this hasn't been easy for you. You've been praying that God will give you the strength just to get through this.
Yeah.
And, the mental strength and the physical strength. And I know that God's going to use this conversation to just help so many people that are.
But Ryan,
right
it was
now.
it was really a God thing that you asked,
Was
because it forced me to actually think about it and go, oh, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
That's what I've done. That's what I've done.
Yeah.
And actually go, okay, this is, you got to put your toes in this water at some point.
For sure.
So thank you.
Thank you too. Tina, I always like to end with two questions. First, and I'm anxious to hear how you're going to answer this first question. Your favorite Bible story and why? And the reason I'm so anxious is because I've heard you share so many stories with kids, and you've taught, so many children's ministry workers how to creatively share these Bible stories. You love the Bible. I'm dying to hear what's your favorite Bible story.
In Tina fashion, I couldn't narrow it down to one.
Yes.
So real quickly, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace is one of my favorites because of their statement to the king. For even if our God does not rescue us, we will still serve our God.
Yes.
So even if I'm not healed, even if I never walk again, I choose not to succumb to the plans of Satan that he has for me today. Another of my favorite stories were the four friends lower their friend through the roof, because that reminds me of the importance of my community, my I love kid men people, the people of faith who surround me, who are willing to go the extra mile. So I'm not totally dependent on myself.
Yeah.
But when it comes right down to it, this is going to surprise you, I think. My favorite story is where God tells Moses to take off his shoes because he's standing on holy ground. Now, the irony of that is I can't stand.
Yep.
I don't have feet.
You don't wear shoes anymore.
On to take
Yep.
off.
Yep.
But it's my favorite because it's a reminder of wherever I am,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, how I'm living, I am standing on holy ground. And that makes every single moment valuable. So there you go. What did you think it was going to be?
You know what? I'm not surprised that in Tina fashion, you showed up with 3 answers to the question. But boy, those are so good. And you know, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that is something that Beth and I pray over our girls, that they would, you know, that as young people, that they would stand when everybody else kneels, because they just have such deep-rooted convictions and a relationship with God. I think that's something we all want for our kids and grandkids, that they would be Daniels, that they would be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's.
Yep.
Tina, final question. I always like to ask people that I have on the podcast, what's something big that Tina Hauser's working on right now?
Life.
Life. That's fair. That's fair.
You know, life.
Yeah.
But there are, in order to do that, I have 7 little things that I try to do every day.
Yeah.
And that are part of big things.
Yeah.
Every day I participate in what we call the We Read scripture reading. It's We, capital W, capital E, for Water's Edge. That's the name of our church. And we read scripture together every day, the entire church. And then pastor preaches on one of those scriptures on Sunday. So I participate in that every day. I spend about 20 or 30 minutes working on some kind of kid men stuff for our local church.
Okay.
Whether that's tweaking a lesson or loading an iPad kind of thing. I am learning. I'm on a 276-day streak. I even did this on both my surgery days.
Wow.
I complete lessons on the Duolingo app, and I'm learning Spanish.
Wow. Okay.
I have no idea why, but I love it.
Yep.
Another thing that's going to be big, that's little now, is I'm journaling a Bible for Lucy. I did one for Bowen, and I did one for Kendall. And now I'm spending this year reading the entire Bible and writing down prayers that I pray for Lucy. Things that, how a verse has impacted my life. An eye opener for reading it that time. So that it's a message for me. And both Bowen and Kendall treasure those Bibles I gave them. So I'm doing this for Lucy.
What a treasure.
Another thing I do is we're trying to downsize a little. So every day I try to take one drawer or one tub or one shelf and just get through the stuff. I have a bunch of Eggermeyer Bible storybooks that I have to figure out how to get rid of in God's campgrounds. Another fun thing that's going to be big is that I dictate one family story each day.
Really?
So I write about something that happened when I was a kid, or since we've been married. Just yesterday, I wrote about one of our dogs, and all the things that happened because of that dog. And then the last little thing is I'm taking an online iPhone photography class, and I watched one of the videos. They're anywhere between 9 and 15 minutes long. And I've learned how to take pictures that actually I'll want to keep.
Well, Tina, you're not sitting still these days, are you?
There's a lot of time that goes into meal prep and just getting dressed.
Yes.
And those things that, I've got to find things that just downright bring me joy.
Yeah.
And who knows how God's going to use any of these things, but it's always a little investment each day. If I tried to write for like I used to for 8 hours at a time,
Yeah.
I would spend days trying to recuperate from it because it's the
Yes.
same motion.
Yes.
So I have to find things that
That's smart.
encourage me to move and
Yeah.
think or type or whatever.
I did not expect to hear that you are su habla español these days. But that's so neat. That's something Beth and I have been talking about lately is we want to, and I wrote down the Duolingo app because it's one of our
Yes.
goals the next few months is we want to start, we know just a little bit of Spanish from high school, but we really want to learn more Spanish.
Mhm. And it's great for that.
Is it?
There's some
Yeah.
things I don't like about it, but mostly it's great. It's
Yeah.
just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tina, thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
Boy, if there's anything you need, please let me know. And I know you'll also share with our Facebook community, the I Love Kidman Facebook community. Know that you and Ray are in our prayers. You have made a huge impact in our lives and in the lives of so many. And I know you're going to continue to do that. And so, Tina, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for asking. No, I'm not giving up. I just don't know where I'm going.
There you go. It's a day at a time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks,
Amen.
Ryan.
God's got great things for you. All right. Thank you too, Tina. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
This episode of the Ryan Frank Podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more conversations to help you stay on the leading edge. And if you like what you've heard, please rate this podcast with 5 stars. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you next time.